Greetings. This system would like to inform listener that host used the wrong microphone while recording. Please excuse the poor audio quality and rest assured that sufficient points have been deducted.
We did it, folks. We made it all the way through the main story of Scum Villain, and now here we are at the extra chapters, Volume 4. MXTX was so good to us with these. Get ready for whimsy and fun and angst and to get to know some folks. And, like Shakespeare intended, all great comedies end with a wedding. Let's get started. Alright, The Scum Villain Self-Saving System by MXTX Volume 4. All the extra stories and chapters. Where to start? So, there are actually 3 versions of this book published by Seven Seas Entertainment. The standard edition comes with the 10 extra stories and is sprinkled with illustrations by Valenci, just like the 3 main story volumes. Then, there's the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. This one has all the content that the standard edition has, with the addition of a fold-out poster in the back of Bingqiu and Mo Shang. The artist credited is ST. Fun fact, I love this art. It's so cute. 2 years ago, my friends and I went to South Korea. We stayed in Seoul, which has my favorite public transport network in the world. Stay with me, this is relevant, I promise. So, in Seoul, you can buy individual tickets to ride the subway, but at the stations, and in pretty much every convenience store, you can also buy reloadable cards that can be used on all public transport. A T-Money card. You can find some pretty cute ones, too. One of my roomies has a Hello Kitty one, and it's adorable. There are also some machines around the city that let you customize your card, so you can have family photos, pet photos, idol photos. Uh-oh, you might see where this is going. So, I pretty much had to take advantage of this, how could I not? I got the Barnes & Noble exclusive art high-def image. Side note, I know the artist got paid for this artwork, so I don't feel bad about using it. I wouldn't do this with fan art, unless you can get permission from the artist. Don't steal fan art if you can help it. Anyway. So now I have a Bingqiu T-Money card. Do I carry it around in my wallet despite the fact that it's completely useless here in the US? That's between me and Airplane Bro. Okay, I got off track. The third version of this book is the special edition. This one has all the content of the standard edition, plus a bunch of fun stuff. It came with a postcard of all 4 volume covers, 2 posters, a double-sided bookmark, and a sticker sheet. Lots of good stuff. I bought both the Barnes & Noble and special editions on pre-order when they came out. 0 regrets. Anyways, enough of the haul, let's talk about the extras. So, there are 10 extra stories. I'm going to talk about them in the order that they are in the Seven Seas publication, with one exception, our very first story. Seven Seas has this one as second to last. Plus, it was listed as the first extra in the fan translation I read. And that's the 100 random questions on Liu Shen's affinity. The setup. This one takes place an undisclosed amount of time after the end of Volume 3. Bingqiu has been established for a while. Airplane Bro gets a mission from the system to interview the couple. This chapter is very lighthearted and feels more like the character theaters that fanfic authors sometimes leave in chapter notes rather than canon events. We just get to see their personalities and reactions. Binghe is soft while talking to Shen Qingqiu and more annoyed when addressing Shang Qinghua. Shen Qingqiu is annoyed talking to Binghe and even more annoyed talking to Shang Qinghua. R.I.P. Airplane. Well, no, maybe annoyed isn't the right word for Binghe. Shen Qingqiu is extremely annoyed with Airplane. Shen Qingqiu rolls his eyes when Binghe asks for reassurance, and he complains a bit about how he really can't do anything against the protagonist crying, but it's all very fond. He calls Binghe a maiden-hearted crybaby, and then feels bad about it. Under it all, Cucumber really likes his Binghe. That's about a third of the interview. Another third are a bunch of brain-rotted sexual questions that I will not get into. And the last third is cringe. Don't be fooled. These are the best parts, in my opinion. We have Binghe saying that their first date was in the water prison and that their relationship was, quote, not very good at the time, which is the understatement of the century. Then we have Shen Qingqiu lamenting that his Binghe still didn't know how to kiss, only how to bite. Then later, when Binghe gets asked where he'd most like to get intimate with his Shizlin, He answers the Baijian Peak training grounds, just to stick it to Liu-Qinge, I guess. But my personal favorite is the private commentary we get from Airplane Bro while he tries to figure out if their relationship feels more like an S&M arrangement or a kindergartner and his teacher. Binghe likes praise and punishment as long as it's from Shen Qingqiu. And Shen Qingqiu is just trying to keep Binghe from crying on him. These two are so silly, and I love that for them. Bing Mei versus Bing Ge. This one takes place very soon after the end of Volume 3. The dust has settled after the confrontation at Maigu Ridge. Shen Qingqiu told Binghe that wherever he went, quote, this master will follow, so here they are in the demon realm. Binghe is sulking a bit because Shen Qingqiu said they couldn't sleep in the same bed one night. And Shen Qingqiu is definitely not sulking because Binghe didn't ask a second time or the next night. He totally wasn't hoping to be persuaded, Tsundere asks. Binghe does have a demon empire to run, so it's pretty reasonable that he can't spend all his time with Shen Qingqiu. But after the radio silence, taking 3 days to sulk is too much, he decides that if Binghe won't show himself, then he'll just have to go out and find him himself. Shen Qingqiu has free reign of the underground palace, naturally. He wanders around looking for Binghe. The place is still pretty empty, although the bamboo they've planted down here has been growing nicely. Eventually, he finds Luo Binghe, or rather, Luo Binghe finds him. He bursts into the hall. Shen Qingqiu is wandering around, completely covered in blood. He stumbles, and Shen Qingqiu catches him. Shen Qingqiu is immediately concerned. Why is Binghe injured? Who did this? Binghe doesn't answer him, and just shouts, leave. And Shen Qingqiu is like, right, good idea. Let's leave. It must be dangerous here if something could hurt Binghe like this. He tries to help him up, but Binghe actually shoves him away. Shen Qingqiu is like, stop fussing, we'll go to Qingjing together. And Binghe is protesting again. Shen Qingqiu is just like, what is up with this self-sacrificing idiot? I'm not just gonna leave him here like this. Meanwhile, Luo Binghe is also freaking out. What the fuck is Shen Qingqiu doing here? Why is he talking to him? Why is he being gentle with him? And now, you, the audience, might have some questions as well. Why would Binghe be questioning this? Haven't they been through enough together that he knows how his Shizuan feels about him? How much his Shizuan wants to help him? How could Binghe go through everything in the last 3 volumes and still react like this? The answer is, he didn't. This isn't our Luo Binghe. This is the stallion protagonist of Proud Immortal Demon Wei. This Binghe has 600 wives, and his Shizuan is locked in the water prison in a pickle jar with no arms or legs. For ease, we'll call him Luo Bingge, and our sticky crybaby, Luo Bingmei. Ge as in older brother, and Mei meaning younger sister. It fits them. So, Bingge lets this weird version of his scum teacher gather him onto his sword and carry them off to Qingjing Peak. It's not burned down, and Ning Yingying and Ming Fan are even talking away as they clean their teacher's bamboo hut. Shen Qingqiu snuck in the back way, as there are still some who are not completely welcoming to Binghe. Liu-Qinge. Shen Qingqiu dismisses the 2 disciples and settles Bingge onto the bed. I need it to be known that at this moment, Shen Qingqiu has no reason to suspect that this is anyone other than his Bingmei. Really, he's just too worried about his state to notice any discrepancies, and he chalks any weird behavior up to the protagonist being dramatic, throwing a tantrum. Shen Qingqiu gets to work cleaning his wounds and assessing the damage. If he needs to call for Mu Qingfang later, he will. Binghe's still being difficult. Silly child, he scolds him. And then, Liu-Qinge kicks the door down. Damn, Ming Fan ratted on them. Luo Binghe is not, super welcome on the mountain yet. Shen Qingqiu gets to work calming his shudi down. Liu-Qinge gives him the fan that he dropped when he left the last time. Meanwhile, Bingge is just watching the scene like, oh shit, Liu-Qinge? He's never really met his brother-in-law because his Shizuan killed him so long ago. Was this really his Shizuan? Shen Qingqiu shoos the war god out of his house by promising that he'll visit the next day, and Bingge calls out to him. Shizuan? Like he's testing out the name. Shen Qingqiu settles him back onto the bed and encourages him to get some sleep. He'll even stay to hold him, just like Binghe likes, so stop being difficult. Bingge gently holds a lock of Shen Qingqiu's hair while the man sends him spiritual energy. How interesting. That night, Luo Binghe scanned through this soft Shen Qingqiu's memories. He learned a lot, but there wasn't enough time to learn everything before morning. Shen Qingqiu wakes up to Binghe getting out of bed. How strange. Normally, he has to kick the guy out to get him to stop cuddling him. He tells him to get dressed. Binghe's old robes are still in the side room. He comes back dressed like a proper Qingjing disciple, and Shen Qingqiu calls him over so he can brush his hair. After Binghe's hair is in order, Shen Qingqiu gets up and heads over to Baijian. He did promise Liu Qingge that he'd come over after all. He tells Binghe to be good and wait for him, and he's off. Binghe, for his part, isn't going to let go of this opportunity to explore. The weird Shizuan's memories were very enlightening. He goes out and runs into Ning Yingying. Instinctively, he calls her by name, and she's like, "Huh? You should call me Shijie, like you always do? Shizuan may dote on you, but you must always respect his seniority." So Binghe calls her Shijie. Binghe tries to ask her for information, but Ning Yingying stops him. "I understand, Aluo. Don't worry. I only do the cleaning when you're not here," and hands him the broom. "Shijie won't compete with you for chores." And she's off. Binghe doesn't think she understands him at all. He heads off to Xianshu Peak for answers. The all-female peak had always been very welcoming to him in the past. Liu Mingyan greets him. She assumes that he's here to see Qi Qingqi on Shen Qingqiu's orders, so she tells him to wait. She'll get her Shizuan and see her friends off. Her friends being the 3 Taoist nuns. The 4 ladies were giggling over some literature. After they leave, Binghe snoops around and finds a book hidden in Liu Mingyan's desk.
The Regret of Chunchang by
liu-su-mian-hua.
Translated as Sleeping Willow Flower.
Oh wow, haha, what a coincidence. Anyway, back to Binghe. This book is very illuminating. When Shen Qingqiu gets back from Baijian, Binghe jumps him. He's pulling out all his suave and seduction. If this world is anything like that book he found, he wants it. Meanwhile, Shen Qingqiu's freaking out. Since when has Binghe been so good at this? Binghe's kissing him? Squeezing him? It's not like any of this is new, but it's not usually like this. Why is he so proficient? Why, even though he's a virgin? Why? An instant expert after only one time? Why? How is this fair? I'm going to sue. I'm going to yell. Why? They're going further. Shen Qingqiu's getting into it, and then he tugs on Binghe's robes, pulling them down to reveal a perfectly smooth chest. Fuck, so that's it. Shen Qingqiu figures it out and shoves Binghe off. This is not his Binghe. Nope. He's only willing to sleep with his Binghe, thank you very much. He summons Shuya. He'll fight him off if he has to. "Where is he?" yelled Shen Qingqiu. Luo Binghe cocked his head. "Who are you asking about? If it's me, aren't I right here?" Now able to catch his breath, Shen Qingqiu asked, "How did you end up here?" Luo Binghe toyed with his hair. "For my part, I'm more curious as to how Shizuan found me out." Motherfucker. There were sword scars on both Luo Binghe's palm and chest, once given to him by Shen Qingqiu himself. "Do you really want to find out?" asked Shen Qingqiu. Luo Binghe lowered his body further and said, his voice chilly, yet colored by a hint of provocation. "It's fine if you don't want to say. We have plenty of time. Enough for me to slowly find out. Then why not look behind you?" The curve on Luo Binghe's lips froze. Startled, he abruptly swiveled his head back, guard raised. A face exactly like his, partly illuminated and partly in shadow, rushed forward. That face was like snow, like frost, frigid down to the core. Yet its eyes burned like ghost fire, the color a searing bloody crimson. Within the bamboo house were 2 identical people with the exact same face. Other than one being dressed in white and the other in black, there was not a single discernible difference between them. At the black-robed Luo Binghe's waist hung a sword sealed tightly within layers upon layers of paper talismans. To think that the once kingly Jinmo, overflowing with power and tyrannical energy, would end up bound in such a rough and unseemly manner, unable to release a single wisp of demonic energy. Luo Binghe's voice came in a hoarse but forceful whisper. "Unhand him." A spiritual blast accompanied this quiet, enraged snarl. The white-robed Luo Binghe locked firmly between Shen Qingqiu's legs promptly and decisively returned it. The two attacks met in midair with a harsh sound, scattering dust and smoke throughout the room. Luo Binghe wore an expression of incredible disappointment. "You couldn't have returned a little earlier or a little later?" he asked, contemptuously. "You just had to choose a time like this." He had yet to finish speaking when Shen Qingqiu curled his pointer and middle fingers. Shu Ye's hilt trembled slightly where the sword had stabbed into the wall, then flew into his hand. His grip clenched into a fist, and he immediately swung his arm, chopping downwards. Sandwiched between two attacks, Luo Binghe finally couldn't maintain that provocative posture any longer. He flipped off the bed, not forgetting to give Shen Qingqiu's waist another squeeze before leaving, then gracefully landed at the other end of the bamboo house. "Shizun is so merciless with his attacks," he said, adopting a sad expression. "Doesn't his heart hurt for this disciple even a little?" "Get the fuck out! Who is your Shizun?" I feel like this extra has the best implications for fanfic in particular. So, MXTX explains that Binghe comes from an alternate universe where everything happens just as it's written in PIDW, and that the punishment protocol where Shen Qingqiu got his leg ripped off was actually Binghe and not just some system hallucination. Binghe is real. Shenjiu is real. Those characters are out there somewhere, and there is some way for them to interact with the characters that we know and love from SVSSS. It also begs the question of what really happened to the Shenjiu of this world when Shen Yuan transmigrated. Food for thought. I can't help it, he's still my favorite. This also brings up some cool questions about Binghe. So we get to see the difference between the two when they fight. Our Bing Mei has a stronger foundation and a larger build. Binghe is strong and an emperor in his own right, but he has the longer-term effects of childhood neglect. Luo Binghe, whether it's Binghe or Bing Mei, is still Binghe. There's no transmigrator or system interference there. They are essentially the same soul, the same person. I brought this up because it might be a little controversial, but because Binghe is Binghe. Shen Yuan had a whole arc trying to figure out that his little sheep was not the stallion protagonist. And I'm not trying to scrap that. His Binghe really is different from the PIDW harem master Luo Binghe, but it's because he wants to be. Bing Mei is just as charming, just as handsome, just as cunning, and manipulative. It's just that his motivations are different. Binghe wants power. He wants to make it so nobody could possibly look down on him. Bing Mei wants Shizun. He wants him to stay with him always. Bing Mei doesn't care what people think of him. He doesn't bother putting in the effort for anyone else. That's why Shen Qingqiu's commentary the entire book was a whole lot of, "Wow, Binghe is the coolest, hottest ever. How come no one else agrees with me?" That's because he wasn't showing anyone else. And then there are the tears. Okay, so this is a controversial part. I don't doubt that Bing Mei is softer and more in touch with his emotions, especially when compared to Binghe, but you gotta admit it's manipulation. Shen Qingqiu caves to tears. He can't stand it. Bing Mei knows that, and he's willing to use it. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Manipulation sounds like such a scary word, but think about Binghe in Volume 2. He thought his Shizun wanted some hardened, powerful demon cultivator, so that's what he was, and it hurt both of them. Shen Qingqiu likes a Binghe that he can comfort with a pat on his head, and Binghe likes head pats. So who is it hurting, really? Bing Mei's just a guy in love that can cry on command. Anyway, I'm getting off track again. We gotta take right now as an opportunity to talk about Binghe and his development too. It's pretty much our only chance. I do genuinely feel bad for the guy. He acts tough and suave, but seeing this soft Shizun and what could have been makes him really realize how much he's missing, namely love. Binghe is used to taking what he wants. He's not prepared for Shen Qingqiu to reject him. On top of that, to reject him for himself, another Luo Binghe, he doesn't understand why it's not him. Why this other Binghe got to have a Shizun that loves him, and he didn't. Binghe is totally wife-beamed, too. I don't think I mentioned that yet.
Yes. This system believes that the scene of him on his lap gave that away.
He wants Shen Qingqiu, just like all the rest of them. Shen Yuan is so powerful. But not only does he not choose him, but he also can't beat the crybaby version of him. That's right. Bing Mei, with the help from Shen Qingqiu, beats Bingge. Bingge asks Shen Qingqiu to come with him. I don't think he even means to ask, but he wants this nice Shizlin. Shen Qingqiu turns him down, and Bingge leaps through a rift on his own. So how did this happen? Some Shinmo fuckery. We can just blame Airplane.
Shinmo is a powerful ancient sword that can create tears through space and evidently through dimensions as well.
Bing Mei did go to sulk after his Shizun didn't want to sleep with him. He went to go meditate in the hall with the Shinmo shards. He destroyed the demon sword at his Shizun's request. The shards started glowing all of a sudden, and he was fighting someone who looked just like him. During the fight, he fell into a rift and ended up in a world that was familiar, but at the same time very different. There were tons of women in his palace, and Shizun was nowhere to be found. Qingjing Peak was nowhere to be found. Binghe doesn't go into much detail, much to Shen Qingqiu's chagrin. He's a fanboy, he wants to hear about it all, but Binghe's not sharing. Okay, so our Bing Mei is back, and Bingge is defeated. Surely that's the end of this extra, right? Wrong. So, during the fight, Bingge kept egging Bing Mei on by throwing jabs at their differences in, skills. He saw some of Shen Qingqiu's memories. He knew that Bing Mei was inexperienced and not very good at seduction. He knows that Bing Mei is very insecure about how his and his Shizun's first time went. Bing Mei doesn't even want to consider Maigyu Ridge as their first time. It's too shameful. So, after Bingge is gone, Bing Mei gets insecure. Did Shizun really enjoy himself more with that other him? Shen Qingqiu stops him from crying, comforting him as they heal the wounds he had sustained while fighting Bingge. Binghe is only lacking experience, but so is Shen Qingqiu. They're partners, lovers. They can experiment and explore together. And that cheers Binghe right up. And then the last 20-ish pages of this extra is them doing just that. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and describe a papapa scene for y'all, but I can give you some highlights. God, what am I doing? So, Binghe's still not great in bed, and Shen Qingqiu is equally as clueless, but at least the world isn't about to end, so there's a lot less stakes. And our two idiots managed to do some prep before going into it. But Binghe is too big. The sky pillar is ridiculous. Shen Qingqiu suggests doing it from the back because he heard it makes it a little easier. But Binghe almost cries at the thought of not being able to look at his face the whole time. Oh, Bing Bing. It's missionary only for Bingqiu. If y'all had any wonders how Binghe always manages to dominate the most pathetic man polls on Twitter, or why MXTX ranked him as her worst love interest in bed, this is why. I still love him though, and so does Shen Qingqiu. Alright, so this next one jumps back in the timeline a bit, to when Binghe was still in the Endless Abyss. Remember when Plant Shizun told Yang Yishuan that he once fought naked succubi with liu-su-mian-hua? This is that story. Shen Qingqiu was in his wanderlust era, always disappearing from the sect for months at a time. So the sect leader ordered liu-su-mian-hua to follow him around, just to make sure he was okay. Shiga always did know how to worry, but this mission. So Shen Qingqiu was asked by a town to bring their young master home. The young master had been seduced by a succubus. Shen Qingqiu wants liu-su-mian-hua to sit this one out because, well, the succubi went after young, handsome men, and that fits liu-su-mian-hua to a T. But I know, and you know, and liu-su-mian-hua knows that he's not interested in succubi. He's only interested in green-clad, fan-dropping scholars. Poor Liu-shidi. Now seems like a fun time to mention that I've always had terminal second male lead syndrome. I can't help it. I always fall for the childhood friends, the nice best friend, the reliable shitty. I love Binghe, don't get me wrong. Bingqiu absolutely deserves each other, but I really want liu-su-mian-hua to be happy. Anyways, our boys walk through the forest to a cave where they meet Madame Mayen. Well, okay, first liu-su-mian-hua goes in swords ablazing, but Shen Qingqiu stops him and wants to negotiate before they resort to fighting. Madame Mayen actually appears in BIDW. She was one of the few who slept with the protagonist, but chose not to join the harem. She's also renowned for making very accurate predictions of the future. They ask her to release the young master. She says something coy like, "Oh, immortal masters, it's not that we're keeping him, but that he doesn't want to leave." But she sends one of her girls to fetch him anyways. In the meantime, she asks if she can do a reading for them. Liu-Qingge declines, but Shen Qingqiu is intrigued. She's very accurate on the matters of love. Madame Mayan smiled pleasantly, then turned over her porcelain wrist to produce a delicate flower bud, which she presented to Shen Qingqiu. "Please breathe upon it." Shen Qingqiu was familiar with the process. He lowered his head and blew gently. Liu-Qingge had been sitting up straight, alert. At this, he bent forward slightly, like he wanted to listen in. The longer Madame Mayan looked at the petals, the more solemn her expression became. Finally, she said, distressed, "Sir, about the red thread from your past. My skill is insufficient, so I can't see it clearly. At first glance, it seems like you were alone, but if I look carefully, I can catch a faint glimpse of another thread," she concluded regretfully. "This thread has been cut. Such a pity." Shen Jiu had once had a fiancé, but Shen Yuan was a single dog. Their two threads were tangled together, so it was no surprise that the madam couldn't see it all clearly. This expression made Shen Qingqiu's heart thump heavily. Shit, could it be he'd be single for life? At last, Madame Mayan began to speak. The other party is younger than you, and their seniority, or perhaps their status, isn't as high as yours. Your first meeting was unhappy, and there might have even been loathing involved," said Madame Mayan. But after a critical moment, that all began to change, and thoroughly so. Liu-Qingge unconsciously turned towards them again. Madame Mayan raised an eyebrow. "The two of you are often together. You have both saved each other's lives." "Is there more?" Liu-Qingge suddenly asked. Shen Qingqiu startled. Only then did he realize that Liu-Qingge was no longer listening in secret. He'd moved over to face them completely. Since when had Great Master Liu had so much interest in gossip? "Your fated person has very little interest in others," Madame Mayan went on. "But once they find someone, their devotion is absolute." Liu-Qingge thought for a while, his expression solemn. Then he asked, "What about appearance-wise?" Shen Qingqiu stared at him, speechless. "Even I haven't asked that. Why are you asking? And you're even getting to the important bits straight on." "A first-class beauty, peerless among all humans," Madame Mayan said with certainty. Uncharacteristically, Liu-Qingge pressed on in hot pursuit. "What about spiritual energy, talent?" "Outstanding talent, incredible spiritual energy, and of illustrious status and noble blood." Liu-Qingge seemed to be shaking his head in disbelief. "You just said that him and this person, they're often together?" Madame Mayan nodded. "Perhaps they may endure short periods of separation, but they quickly reunite, and each time, the other party takes the initiative to chase him." The corner of Liu-Qingge's eyes kept twitching, then he would violently suppress it, like something had greatly disturbed him. Then, Madame Mayan spoke a final line, which dealt him a fatal blow. "I'm very jealous," she said to Shen Qingqiu. "Did you know, Immortal Master, this person is deeply in love with you." Okay, let's talk about that. So first, of course, I have to talk about my favorite, Shen Jiu. He had a red string, but it broke, presumably when Shen Yuan took over. Shen Yuan assumes it was his connection to Zhou Haitong because of their engagement, but I would argue that it was connected to Yue Qingyuan. He swore all his loyalty to the sect leader when they were both lowly slaves, and he kept his word until his death. Those two are really too tragic. But I'll talk more about them in their extra. This one's for Liu-Qingge. So, Shen Qingqiu's destined one is younger, lower ranked. They didn't start off on the right foot, but they came around, and they're always together. They've saved each other's lives. They might be separated for a time, but they always come back together. His destined one will be beautiful, highly talented, and be the one chasing Shen Qingqiu because they're so in love. Everything she's describing here is Luo Binghe, talented, beautiful, younger. We've already seen what happens in the rest of the book. They're separated by the endless abyss right now, but they'll come back together. And Lord knows Shen Qingqiu makes Binghe do all the chasing. But doesn't the description also perfectly match liu-su-mian-hua? Maybe even more at some parts. Madame Mayan supposes that his destined one might be a lower rank to him. Binghe is his student, sure, but he rises to Emperor of the Demon Realm. Shen Qingqiu is liu-su-mian-hua's shishong. Qing Jing ranks higher than Bai Zhan. That feels very clear-cut. Liu-su-mian-hua gets mad at the suggestion that he's totally in love with Shen Qingqiu, but then after Huayue City, he goes back over and over, suffers defeat over and over. Okay, I have a confession. So right after I finished reading Scum Villain the first time, I went to find fanfiction, as one does, and the first one I read was Shen Qingqiu x Liu-su-mian-hua. The second, third, and fourth were all Bingqiu, but the first one was for Liu Shen. No regrets. It's a good ship. Anyways, shit kind of devolves. Liu-su-mian-hua doesn't want to listen anymore. Madame Mayan gets offended at his reaction to her prediction, and young Master Huang still has yet to emerge. Everyone starts fighting. Shen Qingqiu knew the succubi never intended to release the young master. He knew that they didn't intend to let them leave either, but Shen Qingqiu really wanted to talk to Madame Mayan. What a fanboy. So now everyone's fighting, and yes, the succubi are mostly naked. The two eventually manage to drive the succubi off. Now they can free all the young masters. Hooray! Only, it looks like Liu Shidi managed to get himself poisoned. Succubus poison is a very powerful aphrodisiac, you know. In PIDW, the best way to alleviate the poison was a nice round of hot and heavy. The only one around is Shen Qingqiu. Shen Qingqiu, of course, volunteers to help his poor Shidi. He leads him through the succubus cave, and in one smooth motion, kicked Liu-su-mian-hua into Madame Mayan's rose petal-filled bathing pool. Make sure to wash off all the poison, Liu Shidi. Oh boy, that's not gonna fly. Liu-su-mian-hua never takes a dirty trick lying down. He pulls Shen Qingqiu down into the pool after him. So great. Now they're both soaking wet, but at least the poison is gone. Next up is the Chijiu extra. This one's all about the relationship between Shen Qingqiu, the original that is, and Yue Qingyuan. I kind of jumped ahead in the last volume when I went on my Scum Villain rant. Oops. If you were thinking, what the heck, she's describing stuff that hasn't shown up in the book at all, well, here it is. This extra contains 7 vignettes showing Shen Qingqiu's feelings toward his dear Chiga. And this one's pretty cool because it doesn't really take place in the world of SVSSS. Well, some of them are probably the same as the events that occurred in Scum Villain's world because Shen Qingqiu's backstory is presumably the same before Shen Yuan transmigrated. But there are a few events that couldn't have happened because of the transmigration plot. We get to see things from PIDW that Airplane didn't write, and that Luo Binghe didn't see. Content warnings here for child abuse and slavery.
Part 1.
Shen Jiu and Yue Qi have been on the streets for as long as they can remember. They have a pretty good system for collecting spare change from bleeding heart young misses and the like. Shen Jiu can cry on command. Yue Qi spins a tale of his sick younger brother, or they lay a note describing how their parents have abandoned them. Shen Jiu is a pretty child, but he's not so great at gaining sympathy with his barbed tongue. Yue Qi is getting older, and he's never been good at faking. The two complement each other. They watch out for each other. The problems come from the others who are not number 7 or 9. They are the two oldest left in this group of slaves. Shen Jiu has no attachment to the younger kids. All the food and money they can get is food and money not going to Yue Qi or Shen Jiu. Yue Qi feels like he needs to be responsible for them. The little rats are always hanging around, calling him Chiga, even though that name is only okay for Shen Jiu to use. Everyone knows to scatter when the most pompous young masters ride into town. When Shiwu, number 15, didn't run away with the rest of them, Shen Jiu thinks good riddance, but Yue Qi can't leave it alone and goes to look for him. Chiga is an idiot without his Xiaojiao, so he has to go too. Qiu Dianlo is about to punish Shiwu when Yue Qi interferes, and we all know what happens after that.
Part 2.
Shen Jiu could do cool tricks, like the cultivators that would fly over their town. Yue Qi could do some too, but not as good as Xiaojiao. They agreed that it would be best to keep it a secret. There are a lot of terrible places little slave kids can be sent. Spiritual power would only get them sold off faster. Not that it matters anymore. Shenjiu had to use one of his tricks to keep Yueqi from getting trampled. He sharpened a coin and stabbed the horse. That ungrateful rat, Shiwu, sold him out immediately. So now Shenjiu belongs to the Chou house. Shenjiu only needs to wait for Chiga to come back. He needs to keep in good enough graces to not be beaten to death. When Chou Jianlou asks if he can read or write, he lies. When Chou Jianlou presents him with parchment, he copies the only characters he does know, 7 and 9.
Part 3.
Shenjiu thought Yueqi was long dead. It was just wishful thinking, waiting for him to come back. There was no way a dirty slave would be able to make it all the way to the Cultivator's Mountain. More likely, he was caught by more slave traders or the cultivators turned him away. Shenjiu had long accepted that he was dirty. Wu Yanxi was scum. All he cared for was murder, theft, arson, and the likes. So when the two of them broke into the Immortal Alliance conference, Shenjiu thought it would be more of the same. They could slip in, kill a few unaware disciples, loot them, and slip out with the great sex none the wiser. The last person he expects to run into was Yueqi. No, Yue-Qingyuan, as he's now known. Shenjiu needs to leave. Yueqi needs to leave, but then Wu Yanxi is there. Shenjiu tries to convince his scummy master that they've been caught and need to escape quickly, but Yueqi isn't letting them leave. The two start fighting. Chiga is powerful now, but Shenjiu knows Wu Yanxi fights dirty. Chiga is going to lose, so Xiaozhou steps in and stabs his master. Once Wu Yanxi is dead, they can finally talk. Shenjiu asks why he never came back, but Yueqi doesn't answer. The most he gets is some vague, useless apology. Ice-cold fury crawled up inside Shenjiu, engulfing his entire heart. His mouth and nose seemed to fill with the taste of his frenzied, raging blood. First, he'd been a rat, forced to swallow his anger, cringing while awaiting more beatings. Then he'd become a gutter rat, scurrying back and forth as everyone chased it and hit it. No matter how he changed, he was a rat, cowering with its tail tucked between his legs, unable to see the light, letting years slip by in vain, squandering its time and life. Meanwhile, Yue-Qingyuan was a true phoenix that had flown to the summit, a carp that had leapt over the dragon's gate. "All you've ever known to do is say sorry," Shenjiu sneered, then delivered the final ringing blow. "It's utterly useless." Some people were rotten from birth. Shenjiu thought of himself in exactly this way, someone vile and poisonous from the start. Because at that instant, he came to a crystal-clear realization that he'd rather have met Yueqi, who died in some unknown corner, his remains unsightly and forgotten, than a Yue-Qingyuan who was elegant and powerful, his prospects and future boundless.
Part 4.
Shen Qingqiu is the head disciple of Qingjing Peak. He's going to be the next Peak Lord even, but he's never gotten along with his fellow disciples. They exiled him from the disciples' sleeping quarters. Not that it really bothered him. It's not like he could ever sleep in such close proximity to so many men anyways. On nights where he really needs rest, he goes down the mountain to the warm red pavilion. Back at Chou Manor, the only place safe from Chou Jianlou was right next to his sister, Chou Haitang. And even before that, Xiaozhou and Chiga had an older sister and a slave girl until she was sold off to some dirty old man. Over the years, Shenjiu has felt the closest thing to safety surrounded by women, so he goes to the brothel. And then that stupid brute, Liu Qingge, just had to barge in. They had fought at the last Interpeak tournament. Shenjiu couldn't beat him with all his so-called dirty tricks. Being beaten by Liu Qingge was just so frustrating. He had shouted, "Liu Qingge, I'll definitely kill you one day," only for the bastard to turn around and say, "You? Kill me?" "With your ability, I doubt it," was so clearly written on his face. On top of all that, even though he gained the approval of the Peak Lords, even though he'd risen out of the dirt and up the mountain, he was named Shen Qingqiu, the same character as the monsters who owned him. His Shizuen praises his resourcefulness and how quickly he can learn, but he only learned those skills to survive. Learn to read or die, distinguish poisonous plants or die, gain power and knowledge or die. Shenjiu is tired. So now, Shenjiu is at the brothel again. And then Liu Qingge barges in. Can't he have one night of peace? A fight is about to break out right there in the middle of the brothel when who's here to save the day? The ever-reliable and oh-so-upright Yue Qingyuan. Yue Qingyuan dismisses Liu Qingge, and the brute listens because he's capable of respecting his shishongs as long as they aren't Shenjingqiu. The brute is gone again, but the situation isn't better. Yue Qingyuan still believes every vile rumor about scummy, immoral Shenjingqiu. He thinks he's here to further ruin his cultivation and further smear the sect's name. He thinks he's the only one who can't get along with their fellow head disciples, as if those vipers have been so welcoming. And he keeps calling him by that stupid name, no matter how many times he tells him to stop. It's always Xiaozhou this, Xiaozhou that. Xiaozhou died because Qige left him behind, and he still won't tell him why.
Part 5.
The Qingjing Peak Lord does seem to hate the sect leader, so disciples are frantically sending messages when they see Shenjingqiu crossing the bridges to Qiangjing Peak. They're all ridiculous. Shenjingqiu wouldn't seek out Yue Qingyuan if he had a choice. But his most formative cultivation years had been wasted under Qiu Jianlou and Wu Yanqi. The potential he had as a slave child had been wasted, and his foundation had been corrupted by evil techniques. He just needs permission to cultivate in seclusion in the Lingxi caves. Permission granted, he heads straight there. Shenjingqiu starts to make some progress when he hits a snag, just like he always seems to. He feels the chi deviation before two hands on his back are transferring spiritual energy. It's Yue Qingyuan. It's said that the sect leader never enters the Lingxi caves, but here he is. With his energy calming, they talk. Well, they try to. Yue Qingyuan seems uncomfortable, just like the rumors say, and he still won't give Shenjingqiu an explanation, so they talk about something else. The cave he chose to cultivate in looks like a disaster. We, the audience, know this cave as the one Shenyuan Shenjingqiu chooses to cultivate in, the one that looks like a murder scene. Yue Qingyuan knows this cave as the one he himself had been trapped in for over a year, the cage that stopped him from going back for Zhaozhou. The two of them sit there and it's quiet.
Part 6.
The next part takes place in the water prison. The evil Shenjingqiu has been taken into custody at Huanhua Palace on the accusations that he entered Sangshan Mountain Sect under false pretenses, abuses his disciples, and murdered his martial brother, Liu Qingge. Yue Qingyuan pulls every sect leader card he has to get the old palace bastard to let him in to visit Shenjingqiu. Luo Binghe has been going to town. Huanhua Palace doesn't even pretend that this trial would change the outcome of Shenjingqiu's imprisonment. Their meeting here doesn't go very well at all. Yue Qingyuan asks Shenjingqiu if he has reflected on his actions. In his head, Yue Qingyuan will break Shenjingqiu out as soon as he hears the words. If Xiaozhou says he wants out, he'll get him out. If Xiaozhou says he's sorry for his actions, Yue Qingyuan will accept it. But all Shenjingqiu hears is that Yue Qingyuan believes every accusation and rumor against him. In the end, Yue Qingyuan offers Xuansu to Shenjingqiu. He says that if Shenjingqiu truly holds on to such hatred, then he should draw the blade and end them both. To Yue Qingyuan, there's no point in living without Shenjingqiu. If Shenjingqiu drew the sword, he wouldn't even have to cut him down to kill Yue Qingyuan. But Shenjingqiu doesn't take it. He kicks the sect leader out and waits for the inevitable. The section ends with Yue Qingyuan walking away and Shenjingqiu's silent plea that sect leader Yue will never again involve himself with a thing like Shenjingqiu.
Part 7.
I know I've gone over the details sporadically throughout my series, but let's do it again. The Demon Emperor Luo Binghe took over Huanhua Palace. He declared war on Sangshan Mountain Sect directly with a letter of blood and a box with Shenjingqiu's severed legs. Sect leader Yue Qingyuan appeared exactly where Luo Binghe told him to. There, he was met with an ambush of 10,000 poisoned arrows. At the end of it all, nothing of the sect leader's body remained. The only memento Luo Binghe can take as proof is the shattered remains of Xuansu. It breaks Shenjingqiu. Normally, his Shizuan is quiet during their sessions, even when Luo Binghe is tearing his limbs off. But once he saw the broken sword, Shenjingqiu started laughing without sanity. His Chiga finally came back for him, except this time he hadn't been waiting. Okay, I think it's finally time for my Chiga rant, because these two piss me off so much. So, 7 and 9 were doomed by the narrative. They kept missing each other, like Yue Qingyuan only managing to come back after Cho Manor burned to the ground. But it's not like they had to. Nothing's stopping them from talking to each other and figuring it all out. Okay, there's something stopping them, and that's folly. Both of them are flawed in ways that clash. Shen Qingqiu's folly is pride. The world is cruel, and he's only ever been able to rely on himself. He doesn't trust anyone. And more than that, he sees asking for help as an admission of defeat. Shen Qingqiu would rather everyone around him believe rumors that paint him as scum than clear his name and be vulnerable in the process. Yue Qingyuan's folly is guilt. He genuinely believes that being too late is unforgivable, and he's been trying to make up for it ever since. But in reality, all he's doing is turning the other peak lords against Shen Qingqiu with his favors, and confirming Shen Qingqiu's fears that not coming back was a conscious choice. Instead of defending Shen Qingqiu, all he does is apologize on his behalf. Instead of explaining, he just says he's sorry over and over. Yue Qi only wants his Shenjiu back. The thing is, Shenjiu wants Yue Qi back too, but he needs the explanation to forgive him. And Yue Qi just keeps not explaining. God, it makes me want to punch him so bad. And yes, I really do think that it would be as easy as fucking talking to each other. Both of them still do what they think is in the other's best interest. Keyword think. And they both think wrong.
Host has succeeded maximum anger levels. Manual reset initiated.
Yue Qingyuan thinks that Shen Qingqiu is just like that. He's prickly and antagonistic, and Yue Qingyuan is doing everything he can so that Shen Qingqiu can be an asshole in peace, with no consequences. In reality, Shen Qingqiu has a prickly personality, sure, but he's constantly being pushed and insulted in all the ways that hurt until he explodes, chi deviates, sleeps at a brothel, whatever. Shen Qingqiu thinks Yue Qingyuan sees him as some great burden, as a reminder of their shameful past. He thinks that Yue Qingyuan must love this sect and these people so much that he chose this cushy life with them over coming back for him. So Shen Qingqiu looks out for the sect. Not that they ever listen to him, but still. He thinks that if he stays with Luo Binghe, then Yue Qingyuan can go on to live his life free of any burdens. And look how it ended for them. These two hurt my feelings a lot, and I gotta read some fic about it. Let's move on to the next one. The next extra tells us the story of the life and times of Zhuzhelong. Well, it starts before Zhuzhelong received his name. It's actually so sad. Just a poor little snake wiggling on the ground for 15 years, and nobody is kind when they step on it. And then, the young prince of the southern heavenly demons approached it. He comments on the snake's ugliness, but goes on to introduce himself as family. The snake's mother was the crown prince's sister, and according to her wishes, Tianlan Jun is here to offer the snake the armies and land he's owed. After gifting a little snake man an army, Tianlan Jun just walks away. Job done. But the snake follows him, and Tianlan Jun lets him. The snake can't talk, so Tianlan Jun shares some of his demonic power, and the snake transforms into a handsome young man. He doesn't have a name, so Tianlan Jun chooses for him. He thumbs through a random poetry book until he finds something suitable.
竹枝.
Aha!
Translation, bamboo branch.
Tianlan Jun tries to give him a title, Jun, but his little nephew is humble to a fault and doesn't want the same title as Tianlan Jun, so they settle for Long. Zhuzhelong followed his lord wherever he went, sometimes to the armies that Tianlan Jun liked to dismiss by the thousands on a whim, but mostly Zhuzhelong followed him around the human realm. Tianlan Jun was very peculiar. He was so happy to wander aimlessly through the human realm. Zhuzhelong followed him town to town, listening to stories, watching plays, reading books. Zhuzhelong was wary of humans. They kicked him just like the demons did. But Tianlan Jun is interested, so Zhuzhelong is wary for him. Tianlan Jun never brings enough money to spend frivolously, so Zhuzhelong brings it for him. He was following him when they met Su Jian. "Halt," said Tianlanjun. As their shoulders brushed, the woman slightly raised her eyebrow, a mocking smile curling a corner of her lips, and she did indeed halt. "If one sights an injustice while on the road," said Tianlanjun, "should they not draw their sword to give aid?" "If it's a matter of drawing her sword, this humble one will consider it," said the woman. "Conversely, if it's a matter of opening her purse, this humble one refuses, for you have yet to return the 3 silvers I lent you last time." "Is that so?" said Tianlanjun. "It's only 3 silvers." "All right. If you lend me 3 more, you can purchase me for 3 days." The woman flatly refused. "Your distinguished self doesn't look strong enough to carry any burdens. Rather, he looks like someone who has never toiled, who can't distinguish wheat from rice. What's the point of buying you?" Zhuzhulong watched this for a long time. Then he said frankly, "My lord, I fear that this one is disparaging you for being too expensive." Tianlanjun was indeed being disparaged. This wasn't new. Sometimes the servants and guards who served him secretly disparaged him too, especially when he was performing his passionate and dramatic recitations. But being told he was worth less than a mere 3 silvers? That was a bit much. "Let's put that all aside for now," said Tianlanjun. "Surely my face can't be worth less than 3 silvers." The woman choked a little, then studied his face for a while and smiled. True, it's worth that much." Then she tossed him a heavy ingot of gold. From then on, it was as if a dam had broken, and Tianlanjun's expenditures in the human realm burst out like a flood. He became even more unrestrained, even more unfettered, to the point that it was terrifying to watch. He'd found a rich patron. Zhuzhulong couldn't shake the feeling that something about this was wrong, that something was backwards. Zhuzhulong had attempted to alert his lord to tell him that he needed to retrieve his dignity as the highest ruler of the demon realm, but Tianlanjun seemed to find pleasure in this sugar daddy, sugar baby relationship. Beneath the refined surface lay arrogance and indifference, along with an ambition that further concealed her scheming. As Huanhua Palace's second-in-command, Su Jian enjoyed a high, lofty status and commanded thousands at every turn. On top of that, the cultivation world that Huanhua Palace led alongside the other major sects had become the demon race's nemesis since ancient times. Su Jian was indeed someone incredibly dangerous as far as they were concerned. Zhuzhulong reported all the information he'd found in full detail. Yet, Tianlanjun wasn't remotely concerned. Once he became infatuated with something, he disregarded even life and death as he threw all his eggs into that one basket. It wasn't like he didn't know the truth, he just, nonetheless, never showed any doubt. The price of never doubting her was to be sealed beneath the sunless, skyless darkness of Bailu Mountain for more than 10 years, with no chance of return. In all the years Zhuzhulong had followed Tianlanjun, he had never once sent him away, even though he could have. Zhuzhulong could tell that his lord was sometimes annoyed with him, but he still never did. But then there are always exceptions. The first time his lord tries to send him away is under Bailu Mountain. Tianlanjun is trapped, betrayed by humans, and by Su Jian, who he liked the most. Zhuzhulong is stuck in his original form again. He goes every day to the Sun Moon Dew Lake to bring a few drops back to heal Tianlanjun a little bit at a time. He can no longer talk, but Tianlanjun doesn't say much either. Many days, Tianlanjun only says a few sentences. "Go away," and "I hate humans" are his go-to. The second time was during the plot of Scum Villain. It's actually pretty funny, with Tianlanjun trying to convince Zhuzhulong to steal Shenqingqiu from Luo Binghe. Bride snatching is apparently pretty common amongst demon nobility. And then, it's not so funny. Tianlanjun knows that the Sun Moon Dew mushroom body isn't going to last him very long enough to carry out his plan. But what would Zhuzhulong do without him? When Tianlanjun first saw Shenqingqiu, he was relieved that there was someone out there who could take his foolish nephew. As expected, I can't bring myself to hate humans. Tianlanjun had said this to Shenqingqiu. When Zhuzhulong heard those words, he was actually a little happy for his lord. Tianlanjun had finally admitted that his true heart had never changed. Finally, he would no longer need to force himself. Amidst the rolling dust and falling rubble, Tianlanjun sighed and murmured, Zhuzhelong, that appearance of yours truly doesn't look good." This time, Zhuzhelong had no need to complain. Its only thought was that it still had a tiny bit of strength left, enough to hold on for a little longer, so that its lord wouldn't die with it. As Maigu Ridge transformed into smoke and dust, with a thunderous roar, an enormous snake plummeted down towards the heart of the Luo River, which glittered like silver scales. Tianlanjun had said, "But why is loving a person such a difficult thing?" At the time, Zhuzhelong had been unable to squeeze out a smile, nor had it been able to speak. "It is truly difficult," it thought. "But no matter how difficult, it's less difficult than making one's heart stop loving." God, this is one of those chapters where Scum Villain forgets to be Scum Villain. Like, damn, wasn't this supposed to be MXTX's funny internet troll turns gay ha 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 novel? Well, I guess as a satirical take on a stallion novel, a parody to the genre, I guess multi-dimensional antagonists and sympathetic motives actually fits perfectly. Alright, time to get to the bulk of this volume, that being the airplane extras. If you've ever wanted a novel from Airplane Bro's perspective, then the next 100 pages are for you. Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky was a prolific author of stallion novels. Sure, you could say they were trashy, full of plot holes, total male power fantasy garbage, but he pumped out 10,000 words a day, and people always read it. This day, Airplane had just posted a chapter and decided to look at the forums. There was a flame war going, of course, but at least this was entertainment. A good amount of people hated on his writing, calling it shallow and the like. Whatever, tell him something new. An equal amount of people defended him with the usual don't like, don't read, or you can, you up arguments. Same old, same old. Even Peerless Cucumber had quite a lot to say. Most of it hate, but as per contract, I will read a portion of Shen Yuan's forum post. At least the portrayal of the male lead was alright. The transformation from innocent and upstanding to hateful and sinister was detailed and natural. Debts of kindness and grudges were both repaid, and those who should have been killed were mercilessly cut down. Every time I see a useless male lead, I just want to slap him in the face. Being good deserves that good. He's cool enough and darkened enough. I like him. Shenqing Cho, though, that bastard, needs no explanation. Oh, if only you knew, bro. Airplane is actually pretty endeared by this Peerless Cucumber guy. He always left hate comments with huge word counts. He always disparaged how horrible he thought Airplane's writing was, and yet he was back for every chapter. Airplane compares the guy to a woman with a disappointing husband, always filled with love and hate at the same time, always complaining but can't bring herself to leave him. Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky heats himself some instant ramen and sits down to keep working on tomorrow's update. Except he accidentally knocks the ramen over. It splashes onto his laptop charger and his screen goes black. Shit. In panic, he reaches down to grab the noodles and the charger, and hopefully his progress isn't gone, only to experience firsthand what could have been called, quote, full body electrocution, like lightning from the ninth heaven. The guy who used to be called Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky was now living as the guy who would eventually be called Shang-Qinghua from his own book. He had transmigrated into the pitiful sect doormat that eventually betrays everyone he knows for the sake of an ice demon that kills him anyway. Great. Right now, he's an outer disciple at Unding Peak. He spends all day, every day, solving other people's problems and hauling heavy shit back and forth. So great. When he figured out who he had transmigrated into, he tried to leave, to run away, but that bastard system wouldn't let him.
Rule violation. Point deduction.
Today, him and a number of his shishong are off to fetch an order for changing peak.
Upcoming mission. Be prepared.
In his published novel, Airplane had never described how traitor Shang-Qinghua came to work for Mobaijun. Oh boy, get ready to learn firsthand. The cart stops abruptly. Wheels suddenly frozen.
Mission objective, survive.
Okay, let me paint the full picture. Huanhua Palace had launched a surprise attack on the young master of the northern Mobe clan. They had even managed to hit him with one of their Linghua darts. The darts are coated with an anesthetic. They are small and often go unnoticed in a larger wound. But then the dart expands its petals, latching on to the host, leaving them difficult to remove. And then the anesthetic can be even more devastating. Which, side note, Airplane goes on a bit of a tangent when he finds the dart later. When he had written the Linghua darts into his story, he got some backlash about the similarities between the Linghua darts and the ties that bind plant. But that can be easily explained by Airplane just stating that Huanhua was inspired by ties that bind. There, problem solved, and some world building all in one. Take that, peerless cucumber. Anyways, so Huanhua attacked Mobae-jun, but they didn't finish him off. In fact, really all they did was send him into a rage and then run away. And so then Mobae-jun stumbled across this Anding caravan, and he starts attacking. Shang, not quite Qinghua, is bottom of the barrel, even amongst the outer disciples, so his seniors are shoving him forward to confront the demon. Read, they're sacrificing him to give themselves time to run away. When Airplane is shoved out of the carriage and right to Mobae-jun's feet, he does the only thing he can do. He throws himself at the demon's legs and clings with everything he has. My king, please let me follow you for the rest of my life. Okay, so Airplane wrote this character to have no loyalty, willing to betray anyone and everyone for a leg up. So why wouldn't he take advantage of that? And this actually works. Yeah, Mobae-jun seems angry and annoyed and tries to kick him off, but when the rest of the Anding disciples start making a run for it, he shoots them down with frozen arrows. He doesn't kill Airplane though, so that's a win. But he's not completely out of the woods yet. Airplane starts rambling about all the ways he can be useful, like cooking and cleaning, and oh yeah, he can spy on Sangchang Mountain Sect. Mobae-jun is kind of sassy about the fact that he's an Anding disciple. Rude. It sucks that Anding's doormat labor cow reputation extends outside the sect and all the way to the demon realm. But there's not much time to contemplate because just then, Mobae-jun collapses. This is where Shang, eventually Qinghua, discovers the Linghua dart. After avoiding being crushed, he was still clinging to his leg the whole time. Airplane thinks he could probably kill Mobae-jun right now. The Linghua dart is working as intended and even managed to pierce his kidney. Airplane could even just leave him there and he'd probably die on his own. Mobae-jun is the one who eventually kills Shang Qinghua, and even before that, being a spy would probably be immensely stressful and difficult. But Airplane can't bring himself to kill him, or even leave him there. His face is just too beautiful. I know. I'll let that sink in. Airplane generally thinks of all his characters from his book as his children. It just so happens that Mobae-jun is his favorite. He wrote him to be his ideal man. You might think that it should be Luo Binghe, all things considered, but Binghe had primarily been to fulfill his desires to be a badass and get revenge, as well as his desire for wanted.
This part has been redacted.
Eyes deep as night, nose straight and high, full of heroic spirit, icily arrogant beyond compare. This was the beautiful man of his dreams. He couldn't bring himself to kill him. Airplane decides to get a room to rest and recover in. He dumps the Qingjing supply hall next to all the dead Anding disciples. Yeah, I hope you didn't forget about them, because I definitely did. Oops, sorry nameless Anding disciples. So he dumps the cargo and carefully loads Mobae-jun in to shuttle him to the nearest town. This is the part where Airplane tries to farm as much goodwill as possible. The horses were lost in the attack, so he has to push the cart himself. He uses his emergency funds to rent a room. There's only one bed, so he carefully lays Mobae-jun down. And mind you, Mobae-jun is unconscious this whole time. He treats his wound as best he can, which amounts to rubbing whatever ointments and medicines he has on hand into the wound, and waiting for his demonic healing factor to kick in. And because there was only one bed, Airplane lies down on the edge and goes to sleep. In classic one-bed fashion, he wakes up to Mobae-jun shoving him to the ground. In the summer heat, Shang, nearly Qinghua, had naturally gravitated towards the ice block sleeping next to him. I get it. I have a cooling blanket, and it's so nice. So yeah, Mobae-jun woke up, not in the woods, being hugged by that pathetic cultivator that he met in said woods. Airplane sleeps under the table for the rest of the night. He spends the next 4 days at Mobae-jun's beck and call, doing laundry, drawing baths, fetching meals. At one point, he has a dream about a phallic cucumber hitting him over and over as it throws every insult it can think of about Airplane's writing. On the 5th day, Mobae-jun lets Airplane leave the inn. And all Airplane had to do was beg and complain that he was out of rations and about to starve to death. While in town, he runs into Wei Qingwei. It had been long enough that people were beginning to notice the caravan's absence. Unfortunately, while waiting on Mo-bae-jun, Airplane never came up with an excuse for what happened and how he alone survived, so he pretends to faint instead. Back at Cheongding Peak, everyone, for the most part, gives him the benefit of the doubt. They write this off as a tragedy, and Shang Shidi just got lucky. Everyone but the baby Scum Villain. Qingjing head disciple Shenqing Cho has some things to say. Everything about this situation feels suspect to him, but Airplane knows exactly how to get away. He draws Cheongding head disciple Yue Qingyuan into the conversation, and wouldn't you know it, Shenqing Cho is storming off by the 5th exchange. The meeting ends with Airplane being promoted to inner disciple, and he goes to move his stuff into his new dorm room. Shang-Hua found his own small room. Exhausted in both body and soul, he persevered and laid out his bedding, then turned around to pour himself a cup of water. But as soon as he turned back, there was another person lying on his bed. In an utter cliché, the new teacup he had just received from the steward's office dropped from his hands right onto his foot. "My king!" Mo-bae-jun turned to face him. He was expressionless, but his voice was cold as ice. "You'll follow me for the rest of your life, Shang Qinghua was going to cry in fear. "My king, allow me to explain. That day, as soon as I went outside, I just wanted to drink some congee and come back. But who could have known that fate was messing with me? I ran into a familiar Shishong. I was afraid he'd ask too many questions, and I let something slip. And that he'd take people to look for you, my king, and pick a fight with you, which wouldn't have been good. In addition, your injuries weren't causing you serious trouble anymore, so I thought it through from different angles and decided that for my mission, I had to endure disgrace and follow them back here, from where, if I saw an opportunity, I would..."
Cut for time.
"They told you to return, and you just followed them back. What else could I have done?" Shang Qinghua asked, aggrieved. "Refuse to submit on the pain of death? Show my hand and fight? That wouldn't do, aside from the fact that I can't defeat them. The important thing is that I still have to be an undercover agent for you, my king, so how could I ruin my reputation with Sanchang Mountain now?" In the midst of this wildfire burst of enthusiasm, he'd struck while the iron was hot. "A report for my king. I've already become an inner disciple. Doesn't that demonstrate ample drive to succeed? Doesn't that show that I have a lot of potential?" Kissing up. He was kissing up as hard as he could.
New mission, become head disciple within 3 years.
Life is hectic. Running around doing errands for Anding Peak, his only break being when he was running around doing errands for Mo-bae-jun instead. And eventually, he received the name Shang Qinghua to mark him as Anding's next Peak Lord. And now we've made it to the Well mission, aka that time Shang Qinghua had to go on a mission with Shenqing Cho and Liu Qingge at the same time. It goes about as well as I think it could, which is to say, very badly. How many fucking lives of disastrous karma must he have lived to draw this super special prize? Sanchang Mountain placed a high emphasis on maintaining kinship between peers. It was common for a handful of head disciples to group up and sally out on side quests every now and again. On this one, the division of labor between the 3 of them was clear. Liu Qingge was thug, hired to be the vanguard, while Shenqing Cho was in the center, in charge of feigning civility and deploying sneak attacks and finishing blows, as well as waving his fan and being a poser. But don't let anyone know he said that. And Shang Qinghua? Naturally, he was the one in charge of driving the carriage, making inn reservations, carrying luggage, and managing both the trip's income and expenses. Logistics, you know? If only he'd been let off so easy, that would have been great. They say at night, if one looks into the well, your reflection beckons you in and drowns you. When Shang Qinghua looked into the well and saw his reflection smile and wave, he jumped back and did what he did best: play dead. Shenqing Cho and Liu Qingge got to work fighting the ghosts climbing out of the well. At one point, a spirit appeared behind Liu Qingge. Shenqing Cho struck it and it disappeared, but his sword grazed Liu Qingge. Liu Qingge then immediately accuses Shenqing Cho of backstabbing him, trying to kill him. Shang Qinghua tries to speak up, but Shenqing Cho stops him. Our poor Scum Villain in his folly. Even clearing the air feels too vulnerable for him. After everything is over, Liu Qingge storms back to the sect by himself. Shang Qinghua stops him long enough to offer a vague warning about cultivating alone. He and Shenqing Cho make their way back to the sect, too. On the way, Shang Qinghua drops advice how if Shenqing Cho ever stumbles across somebody having a chi deviation, he should not try and deal with it on his own, but run and get help instead. It's too bad that this Shen Qingqiu will never have a chance to use that advice. After becoming a Peak Lord, Shang Qinghua stays busy. And then he's called to a secret Peak Lord meeting to discuss the only one of them not there, Shen Qingqiu. He had been acting strangely all of a sudden. He was more cheerful and kind, and no longer looked at the lot of them like something he scraped off his shoe. Wei Qingwei had already tested for possession with the Hongjing sword and found nothing. Plus, there was no trace of demonic qi in his system. Shen Shishong was still Shen Shishong, and yet he had a very cordial 2-hour conversation with Yue Qingyuan. The 5 exchanges rule had been law the entire time. How could it disappear so immediately? And then he saved Liu Qingge in the spirit caves when none of them would have passed him to kill Liu Qingge instead. And then he defended the sect by himself against invading demons, even going as far as to take a blow meant for a student. Shen Qingqiu sacrificed his own health and cultivation for a disciple all of them were sure he hated. What the fuck happened? I have a few books I can lend you if you really want to know. Cucumber Bro, you really aren't fooling anyone. They conclude the meeting saying he must have had another chi deviation, and it made him forget a lot of stuff. Memory loss isn't common, but it's not unheard of. Whatever. If he's like this, then maybe it's for the better. Only Yue Qingyuan holds hope that he'll remember. Poor Qige. To make everything weirder, while making deliveries, Shang Qinghua sees Shen Qingqiu at Baijiang Peak, hanging out with Liu Qingge. Okay, this part's actually so funny. So, after the invasion, a bunch of Baijiang disciples came to pick a fight with Luo Binghe. They're all just like that. They want to measure their skills against the guy who beat Elder Skyhammer. But with the numbers, Luo Binghe eventually lost. As a sort of petty revenge, Shen Qingqiu went to Baijiang to spar Liu Qingge. Throughout the spar, Shen Qingqiu would ask about various techniques and counters and if they would work, and every time, Liu Qingge would call up a random disciple to demonstrate that technique on.
He beats them up.
This had been going on for hours. At the end of it all, Liu Qingge presents Shen Qingqiu with a short-haired monster he caught, and Shen Qingqiu accepts it. And then, Shen Qingqiu invites Shang Qinghua over for tea. Airplane Bro will never turn down snacks, of course, but it doesn't change the fact that this is all very OOC. On Qingjing Peak, the disciples start discussing whether to keep the beast as a pet or to eat it. Ning Yingying wants to keep it, but Ming Fan thinks they should eat it. Shang Qinghua's too busy watching Luo Binghe hugging Shen Qingqiu to care. It's one thing to hear about strange behavior, it's another thing to watch the Scum Villain pat the baby protagonist's head with your own eyes. At least the tea was delicious. The next part takes place after the Jinlan City arc. Shen Qingqiu is currently in the water prison, and Luo Binghe had just left him there? If Shang Qinghua was still in charge of this story, he would make sure Luo Binghe visited him on the regular for the helpless Shen Qingqiu to be... Whoops, a bit too much resentment for Cucumber Bro snuck in there. Airplane, let's draw it back a bit. Shang Qinghua is chilling at the underground palace when Luo Binghe shows up. Bing Bing's got important matters on his mind. If you hold unique feelings for a certain person, how can you make them understand your intentions? Silence in the hall. Mo Beijun is the first to offer an answer. Beat them up 3 times a day? Nope, absolutely not. As someone Mo Beijun often beats up 3 times a day, Shang Qinghua can attest that it's definitely not a good way to confess. Crazy. Xia Hualing just seems annoyed by the question entirely. She suggests that Luo Binghe ask Meng Mo, but I guess he already did that. Shang Qinghua, as Meng Mo's father, knows his answer was probably something like bang first and solve everything else after. So it's all up to Shang Qinghua to help him out. Airplane solution? Be clingy. Hold on and absolutely never let go. Be perfectly obedient and loyal and listen to everything they say. That's how Shang Qinghua would have done it anyway if he had a special person. If you want a man, you should act as pathetic as possible. Binghe finds something useful in all of that and leaves. Shang Qinghua cowers behind Mo Beijun to avoid Xia Hualing's fists. There's a moment where he thinks Mo-bae-jun might beat him up, but instead he pats Airplane on the head. How weird. But it's not a beating, so he'll take it. Here's hoping Shang Qinghua figures it out soon. A little bit after the Maigu Ridge incident, Shang Qinghua goes back to life as usual. Yue Qingyuan offered him his place back with the Peak Lords. Liu-binghe and Cucumber Bro are off gallivanting who knows where, and even Mo-bae-jun hasn't been beating him up as often. Life is good.
Basic completion of PIDW original plotline. Objective complete. Retrieving function to return to original world. Activate return home sequence.
Let it be known, Shang Qinghua is tempted. Lord knows he misses air conditioning and instant noodles, but as much as he misses some things from that world, did anything from that world miss him? We get to know a bit about Airplane's life before. His parents divorced early, he lived with his dad, but he settled into a new family. Airplane moved out for school, and while his dad did help him out with tuition, he was on the hook for all his other expenses. And that's how he first started writing web novels. He lived like a total shut-in. Apart from a few phone calls a year with his dad, he didn't interact with friends or family. Not that he really had friends there. At least in this world, he has Mo-bae-jun. Hold on, did he consider Mo-bae-jun his friend? He certainly is the one he's interacted the most with over the years. Plus, since the beatings had decreased, Shang Qinghua felt way more at ease around the ice demon. Speaking of Mo-bae-jun, the demon in question was currently leading Shang Qinghua up a blizzarding mountain. His king just showed up on Anding Peak, dragged Shang Qinghua out of bed, blankets and all without a single word. When they reached the top, Mo-bae-jun just stops and waits. Eventually, Shang Qinghua asks how long they will be standing there. Mo-bae-jun replies, 7 days. Great. At least this gives him a lot of time to think about the system's offer. In the midst of contemplating, Airplane accidentally voices his thoughts out loud, and it starts a bit of a fight. Shang Qinghua's talking about leaving, even though he's constantly telling his king that he'll always follow him. Mo-bae-jun says that if he wants to leave, then he should. Shang Qinghua's like, even if it means we'll never see each other again? And then Mo-bae-jun just starts dismissing him, not leaving any room for argument. So Shang Qinghua starts to make his way off the mountain. Now, I should explain what's going on here. You see, the Moe clan of the Northern Desert has a ritual for choosing their monarch, the one true Mo-bae-jun. After his father died, 7/10 of his power will be passed on to his successor after waiting the 7 days on the mountain, but it leaves them vulnerable to assassination. In PIDW, Mo-bae-jun had Liu-binghe by his side during the ritual. No one dared to approach, with the Emperor of the Three Realms acting as guard dog. Mo-bae-jun of this world only brought Shang Qinghua, and Shang Qinghua only realizes all of this as he passes Mo-bae-jun's uncle, Lingguan-jun. Mo-bae-jun's uncle had always had it out for him. He felt jilted by his brother ascending the throne. And then his brother had an heir, effectively cutting him out of the line of succession completely. When Mo-bae-jun was a child, the demon equivalent of a human 5-year-old, his uncle took him to the human realm and left him there. It took weeks for his father to notice, and if he didn't, who knows how long the child would have been trapped in the Huanhua water prison. This is pretty much Lingguan-jun's last chance. If he wants the Mobe clan's power, he needs to wait until Mo-bae-jun fully takes the power and then kill him. Lingguan-jun would be the only remaining descendant of the Mobe bloodline, and the power would be his to take. And here he finds his nephew alone. He passed his little human leaving, and now there's nobody else. The last thing either of them expects is for Shang Qinghua to turn around. Why would Mo-bae-jun bring Shang Qinghua in the first place? He gets the protagonist is occupied, but surely there are others he could have asked to watch his back. Why Shang Qinghua? Well, that goes back to Maigu Ridge. When Mo-bae-jun fell off the ridge, Shang Qinghua dove to catch him. Both of them had been under the impression that Shang Qinghua only hung around Mo-bae-jun to protect his own pathetic little life, and that the human's sole uses were, at most, flattery, boasting about him, and a target for venting his anger or whatnot. Both of them expected that Shang Qinghua would be the first to run and save his own ass. But then, Shang Qinghua saved Mo-bae-jun. Mo-bae-jun took him with him to the mountain, but then when his uncle appeared, he changed his mind and sent him away. But Shang Qinghua stayed. He hid for the 7 days. Ling Guanjun couldn't do anything until the power began the transfer. On the 7th day, Ling Guanjun sent a powerful blast of corrupted qi at his nephew. Mo Beijun needed time for the clan's power to absorb into his body, and then it could burn out his uncle's poison. But Ling Guanjun isn't going to give him the chance. That's when Shang Qinghua steps out. A few weeks ago, he had gotten Cucumber Bro's help in attaining immortal flames. He threw the flames down in a protective circle around Mo Beijun. Now, he couldn't leave, but neither could Ling Guanjun enter. Nor would any of his ice attacks be able to travel through. The only downside now being that Ling Guanjun's attention and ire is fully on Shang Qinghua. Ling Guanjun decides that if he can't get to his nephew, he will bash his pet dog for as long as it takes to drive him out. Uh-oh. Yeah, this is where Shang Qinghua has a really bad time. I'll spare you the gruesome details, but it's not fun. Shang Qinghua thinks his arm is about to be ripped off when Mo Beijun really does leap through the immortal flames to attack his uncle. He's ferocious enough to scare him off. Ling Guanjun has no chance of beating Mo Beijun with the clan's power. But he was bluffing, and as soon as he disappeared, Mo Beijun collapses right next to Shang Qinghua. Now Mo Beijun would finally have to listen to him. He took a deep breath. My king, in fact, in the first place, I didn't want to leave at this sort of time. I really didn't know that it just so happened to be the key moment when you were about to succeed your father's position. Why didn't you tell me earlier, when it was something so important? Mo Beijun used his expression to say, kneel down, cry, and admit that you were wrong, and then I'll pardon you. The corner of Shang Qinghua's mouth twitched. To tell the truth, you shouldn't have brought me, he continued. I can't do anything at all. I can barely serve as a punching bag for you to beat up from time to time. You saw me just then. I was thrashed this badly, and I only bought you a bit of time. But you seriously injured your uncle, and he probably won't dare to come back. You're almost done digesting it, right? So I'll just leave first. Mo Beijun's expression had eased a bit, but upon hearing this last sentence, cold light beamed from his eyes. You're still leaving? You dare? Having suddenly been bellowed at, and still hurting from head to toe, Shang Qinghua was overcome with rage. He slapped the ground and yelled, "What don't I dare?" This was a monstrous degree of audacity. Mo Beijun's face was full of disbelief. But Shang Qinghua's many years of accumulated grievance continued to spew out in this moment with the power of an arcing rainbow. You saw that I had a good temperament, that I was easy to push around, and also that my cultivation was lacking, so I was fun and satisfying to torment, right? You thought I was really no one likes being beaten up every day, and no one would actually be all cheery after getting beat up every day. I'm not actually a dog. Even with a dog, if you kicked it twice a day, given enough time, it learned not to bother with you anymore. Mo Beijun said, "Do you want to die?" Under the circumstances, the intimidation factor of those words had suffered a huge loss in value. "I don't," said Shang Qinghua. "And not only do I dare to leave, I dare to do other things. Would you believe it? This Peak Lord will, right here, right now, beat you back for every time you beat him before." "You," Mo Beijun said angrily. You what? You dare again? I'll tell you what, right now. I really do dare. Come at me." And with this, Shang Qinghua rolled up his sleeves, eagerly shaking his fist in front of Mo Beijun's ashen face. Cold blades shot from Mo Beijun's gaze, but Shang Qinghua wasn't frightened in the slightest. His fist swung in a strike straight towards Mo Beijun's head. On instinct, Mo Beijun averted his face, only to feel the skin of his cheek tighten. It was a very unfamiliar feeling, a bit itchy, a little bit painful, but entirely not the expected strike. Two of Shang Qinghua's fingers had pinched his cheek on one side and forcefully pulled. "How's that? Does it hurt?" While pulling, he thought, "This is not what I was fucking thinking of doing. Beat him. Yeah, beat him while he can't move. Tugging on his face and letting him off with just that? No matter how you look at it, you'll be getting the short end of the stick." But there was nothing to be done. Sure enough, Shang Qinghua still couldn't bring himself to beat that face. When it came down to it, Shang Qinghua was, in truth, a coward. He had just committed a crime of passion and had his bit of fun, but after the fact, he began to fear being sent to the crematorium, especially when Mo Beijun's face had recovered its normal shape. His expression was truly Shang Qinghua's heart quailed at the mere sight of it. He hurriedly patted his hem, preparing to break into a run and leave. He had skidded a few large steps away at meteoric speed when Mobaejun shouted at his back, "If you want to keep your legs, stay there and don't move." On reflex, Shang Qinghua obeyed the order. He didn't dare turn around. "My king, I really am leaving." "Shut up. Come back." Shang Qinghua continued, unimpeded. "Even if you're angry, don't come looking for me. After I return, you absolutely won't be able to find me again, so don't spend energy on a useless effort. So, my king, bye then." Mobaejun was nearly roaring. "If you have the guts to leave, then never let me see you again." Shang Qinghua turned a deaf ear. After a few steps, he added one more line. "I was very happy to meet you. Really. You're even cooler than I imagined."
Activate return home sequence.
Airplane had just been wandering around. He'd lived in this world of his creation for a long time now, so maybe he just wanted a little goodbye tour. But after a month, it really just felt like procrastination. One day, he wanders upon Cucumber Bro and the domesticated protagonist. Shang Qinghua still finds it a bit disturbing watching Bing Bing housewife it up. Bing He is cooking noodles. Shen Qingqiu calls him over to talk. They make small talk, they jab at each other a bit, and then Shang Qinghua spills everything with Mobaejun on the mountain. "You really want to return to the modern world?" Shen Qingqiu asked. "So shooting your airplane too often really is bad for your eyesight. You can't even see the crux of your own problems anymore. Wake up. You're waiting for him to apologize, then scoop you back up and continue to lightly beat you 3 times a day." Before they finished chatting, food was served. Bing He, being Bing He, only serves himself and his shizun. For all that he's docile and soft for Shen Qingqiu, he's still only cold and scary to Shang Qinghua. Eventually, Shen Qingqiu scolds him for not respecting his shishu, and Shang Qinghua is able to grab some protagonist noodles. Shang Qinghua keeps wandering. He finds himself on a picturesque ridge. He threw his sword into some forgotten corner some time ago, so if he were to fall down there, he'd probably die. Airplane doesn't even have enough time to acknowledge the flags he's raising before Ling Guanjun jumps him. Ling Guanjun is mad. He totally blames Shang Qinghua for his failure to acquire the Mobe clan power. Shang Qinghua initially thinks it's going to be like on the mountain. Ling Guanjun is going to beat him up to draw Mobaejun out, but him and Mobaejun parted already.
Uh-oh.
Well, it so happens that Ling Guanjun isn't patient enough for that anyway. No, he's here to vent his anger. Killing Shang Qinghua should do. Shang Qinghua tries to bluff with some flame spells, but the difference between these and the immortal flames used earlier is obvious. Ling Guanjun shoots a bullet of demon chi straight through Shang Qinghua's leg to keep him from running. Oof. It's pretty much pure instinct that has him calling out for his king, and when Mobaejun actually appears... You guys, I think Airplane is starting to figure it out! Mobaejun makes quick work of Ling Guanjun, breaking both his legs and pushing him into the ravine. And now it's time for Mobaejun and Shang Qinghua to talk to each other, properly this time. It starts pretty awkward. Shang Qinghua still thinks he's really mad, and to be fair, Mobaejun talks in short sentences, and it does always make him sound a bit annoyed with Shang Qinghua. But then Mobaejun tips his hand. "If I let you hit me back, then will you not go?" Oh, what the fuck? And then Mobaejun goes a step further, presenting his face, emitting a bold aura of "hit me however you like, and I won't retaliate." And Shang Qinghua's just jaw on the floor until Mobaejun's like, "Time's up, fine, I won't let you hit me, let's go." And Shang Qinghua's like, "What the fuck? There was a time limit? Damn!" Mobaejun tugs him along, but Shang Qinghua complains about his injured leg. Mobaejun scoffs before disappearing. Shang Qinghua is alone just long enough to think maybe his king changed his mind after all, but then he's back with a handcart, and then he's lifting Shang Qinghua into the cart and he starts pulling him along. In a fun little reverse of the day they first met, Mobaejun shuttles Shang Qinghua off the ridge. Feeling bold, Shang Qinghua announces that he's hungry. He wants noodles. Mobaejun agrees. Hand-pulled noodles, and he wants Mobaejun to make them. Mobaejun agrees. And... Shang Qinghua suddenly can't remember why he'd ever wanted to leave. He wants to start writing again. Sleeping Willow Flower's Regret of Chunshan had opened up a market. Other authors, like the Holy Mothers, had also been publishing stories about Bing Cho, but Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky had a much different style. Plus, with so many handsome cultivators like Liu Qingge and Yue Qingyuan, it seemed like such a shame to only write about one couple. Yeah, Airplane was getting a lot of ideas now. Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky propped his legs, the handcart creaking and swaying along the bumpy mountain road. The evening sun descended in the west, and Mobe Jun pulled him along, going in who knows what direction. This story was riddled with landmines, a whole chaos mess with grade school level writing, and maybe the more serious readers would throw it down with a curse of, "What dog shit is this?" But Great Master Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky was used to making excuses for his own fraudulent behavior. He could throw out 1,000 "it's justs" to smooth things over. For example, "It's just reading a novel. It's like living your life. You just have a good time. Why take it so seriously? It's a silly novel the author wrote for fun. Don't set your expectations too high, everyone, and please bear with me. It's just a brainless, satisfying read. Wake up. What did you expect to read? It's just. It was just that he really, very much liked this story he had written. And those were the Moshong extras. Did y'all love them? I did. Poor Airplane Bro. He really wrote that demons show romantic affection by beating each other up. It's so funny when Shang Qinghua tells Luo Binghe to be pathetic to win his husband, and Mobe Jun's just like, "Oh, that's why you act so pathetic. I see." All the while, Shang Qinghua has no idea what's happening. I like the dynamic of every demon finding Shang Qinghua's weakness annoying. Xia Hualing especially likes to terrorize him, but Mobe Jun is endeared by it. And with him around, Mobe Jun might beat him up 3 times a day, but that's his right, and his right only. No one beats his hamster but him. I also think it's really interesting that the system offers him a way back to his original world. Did he really not die from electrocution back then? Are he and Cucumber Bro just laying comatose in some hospital in Shanghai? Who knows? For now, let's get back to Bing Cho. There are still a few extras left. Next up, we have the Deep Dream extra. This one's a bit of a downer, but it has a happy ending, I promise. So, one day, Luo Binghe felt he had reached a critical point in his cultivation. So, that night, he turned off his cultivation, and because of that, he held no control over his dream realm. And because of that, Shen Qingqiu found himself drawn in. Shen Qingqiu bears witness to various memories. The first being from Binghe's time in Huanhua Palace. He had kidnapped Mu Qingfang. Shen Qingqiu watched his normally patient and amicable Shidi tell Luo Binghe that there was no way to bring the dead back to life. Luo Binghe tells him that, as the cultivation world's best healer, there's no need for him to return to Sancha Mountain Sect until he comes up with something. Mu Qingfang is dragged out, and Luo Binghe goes to preserve Shen Qingqiu's body. He embraces the body and sends spiritual energy. Shen Qingqiu observes the signs of death retreat from his corpse. The next memory is back on Qingjing Peak. This is the incident that preceded what Shang Qinghua saw on Baishan in the airplane extras. Shen Qingqiu had heard his disciple leaving the bamboo house in the middle of the night, so naturally he had followed him out. Binghe was covered in bruises. It wasn't hard to tell that he had been bullied by Baishan disciples again. Dream Shen Qingqiu scolds him, reminding him that there's no shame in running from a fight when you can't win. But Binghe refuses. He feels like retreat would reflect badly on his Shizun. Shen Qingqiu sighs at his disciple. What is he to do with him? He grabs the bruise balm and coaxes Binghe into letting him help him apply it. Then, Shen Qingqiu hugs him and shares spiritual energy to speed up the recovery. So that's where Binghe learned this particular method. In the dream, 16-year-old Binghe is freaking out, very visibly flustered. He runs away and it causes a big ol' scene on Qingjing Peak in the middle of the night, and ends up with Binghe throwing himself into the cold pond. And then we're back in Huanhua Palace. Shen Qingqiu watches the dream pass slowly. He watches Binghe's monotonous life, sharing spiritual energy and cooking food for his Shizun every day without fail. On one of those days, Shen Qingqiu watches Luo Binghe tumble into the corpse's room later than usual. Binghe apologizes. Liu Qingge had come to rescue Mu Qingfang. As Binghe lays down and begins to share spiritual energy, he whispers out one-way conversations. In this memory in particular, Shen Qingqiu desperately wishes this Binghe could see or hear him. Shizlin, I can't hold on for much longer. Shen Qingqiu didn't speak. Luo Binghe smiled. It's true, Shizlin, if you don't wake up soon, I won't be able to hold on for much longer. But Shen Qingqiu knew that he would hold on. He would hold that ice-cold, lifeless corpse and hold on for almost 2,000 more of these days and nights. Shen Qingqiu finally wakes up to Binghe hovering over him. He must have realized he had inadvertently dragged his Shizlin into a nightmare. Shen Qingqiu doesn't really care about any of that. All he needs is Binghe, and Binghe is already here. He pulls him in for a kiss. Binghe is confused. His Shizlin isn't normally this bold, but he's not really complaining. When asked, all Shen Qingqiu can say is that, tonight, he feels like he likes Binghe a great deal. I told you this chapter had a happy ending, in more ways than one. But all jokes aside, I love this chapter and it makes me emotional. Shen Qingqiu seeing Binghe struggling and on the brink of giving up while also knowing that Binghe continued to hang on for years anyways. And he doesn't want to bring it up. He feels bad about it, and talking about it won't help right now. So Shen Qingqiu just pulls Binghe close and tells him that he really, really likes him. And right now, that's exactly what Binghe needs. This next extra has one of my favorite tropes, that being age regression. I know, kind of a weird pick, but it's just so fun. Shen Qingqiu wakes up one morning, sore and a bit sticky from the night before. Normally, Binghe takes care of everything after Shen Qingqiu goes to sleep, and he gets to wake up clean and to a hot breakfast. This day, Shen Qingqiu wakes up to a tiny, de-aged Bing Bing. A similar incident happened in PIDW, so Shen Qingqiu isn't super worried, but the Demon Realm probably isn't the best place to stay for now. Luo Binghe, on the other hand, is suffering quite a bit. He only has about 1/10 of his power currently. He's okay waiting the deviation out in a human realm. This is the result of chi deviation, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. Back to what I was saying. Binghe is suffering because his cute, squishy 5-year-old face keeps making Shen Qingqiu pinch his cheeks and kiss his nose, and Binghe kept all the memories in his adult brain. And all of this to say, Binghe's horny as ever, but he can't do anything about it. They take a bath at the hot springs, keep it together Binghe, before heading to the human realm. Binghe didn't want to go to Sanchang Mountain Sect, so they pick a random town and buy a nice courtyard to vacation in. And then Binghe's suffering continues. Everyone in this little town just sees a rich young master, with a calm, scholastic demeanor who happens to be a single father. Everyone in this town sees Shen Qingqiu as a perfect addition to their family. Wherever they go, women throw themselves at him. Men pitch their daughters, nieces, sisters, whoever. It only takes a month before they're fleeing their newly purchased courtyard and headed off to Qingjing Peak. Binghe's having a rough time. A disciple sweeping the stairs sees Shen Qingqiu carrying a tiny Binghe, and the entire sect knows about Peak Lord Shen's son before they can even make it to the bamboo house. Ning Yingying comes bursting in with all these potential baby names and is actually disappointed when she finds out about the age regression plot. By the time Liu Qingge and Yue Qingguan are swinging by, Shen Qingqiu's just like, what the fuck, you guys? How could he, a man, in case you forgot, have a child? And besides, Binghe's too big to be his child anyways. No one else sees these as issues. They assume there was a weird plant or artifact involved. Or maybe Heavenly Demon Seed could just do that, even without the right parts. Ming Fan says that he assumed that any child of Luo Binghe would just come out that big. Shen Qingqiu goes to a Peak Lord meeting since he's here, and everyone gossips some more. Sangchang is trying to ban the regret of Chunshan, as well as another work known as the Song of Bingqiu. We'll get back to that, I promise. When he finally escapes his martial siblings, he goes back home to Binghe. Luo Binghe really doesn't like it here. At least his body has aged up to around 7, so he should be back to normal in no time. Shen Qingqiu assures that they can leave as soon as he's recovered, since Binghe doesn't like Qingjing Peak. Binghe says he just doesn't like how easy it is for people to steal his Shizlin here, and that, in his current state, he doesn't have the power to steal him back. He likes Qingjing Peak, but only when it's just the two of them. Shen Qingqiu tells him again and again that he won't have to steal him back, because Shen Qingqiu will choose to go to Binghe himself. And in the perfect moment, with the perfect atmosphere and setting and mood, Luo Binghe can only scream his frustrations at the sky. Okay, so the next extra is called The Regret of Chunshan and the Song of Bingqiu. See, I told you I'd get back to it. This chapter, I'd say there's a fair amount of smut in the extra chapters, but it's usually a conclusion for whatever happened in such and such extra. Well, this one's all smut, with very little plot. If I'm honest, I don't think I can tell you a lot of what happens in this one. Just know it's absolutely filthy. Like, seriously, it gets pretty degenerate, so if you prefer vanilla or fade to blacks, just skip this one. No shame. A quick summary. Basically, while waiting to age back up, Binghe ended up reading a bunch of RPF smut.
RPF or real person fiction. He is reading fictional stories about people he knows in real life. But listener knows this is all fiction, right?
And now he's back to full grown, and he wants to try it out. There are a lot of excerpts from The Regret of Chunshan, and Sleeping Willowflower can put even Airplane to shame with some of these scenes. Oh, is this a good time to mention? I don't think I have before, but Sleeping Willowflower, the author of The Regret of Chunshan, is none other than Liu-su-mian-hua. Poor Liu Qingge doesn't even have his sister rooting for him. The head disciple of Xianshu Peak had a little side project going on. It's the reason why the book, as trashy as it is, still managed to have way too many accurate details on both Shen Qingqiu and Luo Binghe. And while we're here, I'll just say that the three holy mothers who wrote the Song of Bingqiu are the three Taoist nuns, the same ones that helped Binghe finally get his demonic powers under control in PIDW, and the same ones that Plant Shizun fantasized about shoving back into Xia Hualing's captivity in Volume 2. Okay, but back to the spark notes of this chapter. Binghe shares this fanfiction, reads some of it out loud, and then Shen Qingqiu reads some for himself. Shen Qingqiu is horrified, naturally, but Binghe really wants to try it, and Shen Qingqiu eventually caves. And that's when Binghe pulls out the wine bottle. So, how do I say this? The scene Binghe wants to try involves a strong aphrodisiac wine that no one is drinking. Well, not in a traditional sense. Let's see, what else can I share about this chapter? Oh, this one breaks Binghe out of his only face-to-face era. Hooray for doggy style! Never thought I'd say that. Anyways, Shen Qingqiu gets wine shoved up his ass, they bang, and everyone lives happily ever after. The end. For this chapter anyway, let's move on. We're ramping up to the endgame now. The penultimate chapter, Honeymoon. This one starts with the ever-suffering Mingfan kicking Bingqiu off of Qingjing Peak. I don't blame him. While Shen Qingqiu and Luo Binghe were playing lovey-dovey in the bamboo house, Mingfan was dealing with everything else, namely Baijian Peak. Like every other time Bingqiu had decided to visit the mountain, Baijian disciples come in droves trying to fight Luo Binghe. Liu Qingge doesn't do anything to stop them. If anything, he's probably encouraging it. And now that the happy couple has been on the mountain for an extended amount of time, Baijian disciples have been destroying the Qingjing gates in their raids over and over. And eventually, Shang Qinghua stopped approving repairs, leaving Mingfan to descend the mountain himself and repair the gate with his own meager funds. The solution? Bingqiu needs to leave. So they do. Binghe says it's a perfect time to go on a little love tour. They can revisit significant locations from their relationship. First stop, Shuanghu City. Binghe has two things on the agenda. The carriage ride where Shen Qingqiu first smiled at him, and the shed where he experienced his sexual awakening. Spoiler, this does not go as planned. It's not that Shen Qingqiu forgets these events that were so significant. Well, I mean, he totally forgot about the carriage ride, but Shen Qingqiu has very different feelings towards the events. He vaguely remembers the awkward, silent carriage ride to Shuanghu City that first time, but more, he remembers the system slapping him with OOC deductions. Eventually, they make it to town. People still recognize them, which is fun. Old Man Chen is even older, but the girls on his arm are just as young as before. Gross. They run into Madame Mayen, of all people, at the tea house. She brags about how accurate her prediction was. It's true. Bing-he is younger than him, peerlessly handsome and powerful, and they certainly danced around quite a bit before sticking together. Shen Qingqiu grumbles, but it's true. He's just bitter that she never told him that his person would be a man. And then Madame Mayen just starts bitching about Liu Qingge. Apparently, he chased her all over even after that mission. Bing-he gets super jealous hearing that Shen Qingqiu and Liu Qingge had gone on a mission to a succubus cave together. Madame Mayen fans the flames like, oh yeah, I definitely remember dumping succubus poison on the two of you before I left. Tee-hee-hee-hee. No amount of assurance seems to be working. Shen Qingqiu tells him over and over about how he basically drop-kicked Liu Qingge into a pond to deal with the poison. Bing-he is just pouting harder. But hey, Bing-he wanted to go somewhere else, right? Let's go there now. The room where they fought the Skinner demon all those years ago is rumored to be haunted. They might as well investigate. As no one dared to approach the room that was rumored to be haunted, it was naturally very quiet and peaceful. When he saw that, at last, there were no people around, Luo Binghe latched on to Shen Qingqiu without delay, rubbing against him as he held his waist from behind, chin hooked over Shen Qingqiu's shoulder. He asked in a whisper, "Does Shizuan remember this place?" Of course he remembered. Wasn't this the place where he'd first turned on easy mode? Alright, that was a joke. How could he not remember? This was the place where he'd screwed Luo Binghe over for the first time, and so terribly. Back then, in order to preserve his own life, he'd almost let the Skinner demon strike Luo Binghe on the head. It had been a rather unkind thing to do, and now that he recalled it, he even felt bad. He was too ashamed to think about it deeply. When he didn't answer, Luo Binghe began to bitterly complain. Shizun, you've really forgotten? This disciple is so anguished. Ever since the two of them had begun fooling around, Luo Binghe hadn't been able to pass a single day without becoming anguished, at least several dozen times. When Shen Qingqiu spoke a couple of words to other people, he'd become anguished. When Shen Qingqiu took 2 fewer bites, he became anguished. When Shen Qingqiu complained that the bathtub was too small and kicked him out, he became anguished. His anguish was like snacking on broad beans, showed up with a snap and then disappeared with another snap. But now that he was standing at the scene of his former crimes, Shen Qingqiu felt guilty and couldn't help but soften a little. He quickly reached up and patted Luo Binghe's cheek. "Don't be angry. Today, Shizuan will grant you one request, but let's deal with the evil spirit here first." Luo Binghe was delighted. "Really?" Since Shizuan said so. Luo Binghe pulled out length after length of red rope. His face flushed. "Hello, immortal binding cables. Goodbye, immortal binding cables." When Luo Binghe saw Shen Qingqiu's look of sheer disbelief, he didn't force it. He just sighed, staring up at the sky. "For some reason," he said softly, "ever since the day this disciple safely escaped from the Skinner demon, on many nights he experienced strange dreams." What do you mean by strange dreams? The kind of dream where you have to wash your underwear after waking up? Shen Qingqiu had sinned. It turned out that he had even been the pubescent Luo Binghe's Sexual Awakening 101 instructor. Even now, this disciple is at times tormented by this dream. If he said in days past, it might have been believable, but a Luo Binghe who had mastered controlling dream realms being tormented by them? This lie was way too thick-faced and shameless, and said with all confidence at that. Shen Qingqiu put his hand on Shuya and chuckled lightly. "So..." Luo Binghe didn't even turn his head. The black fog couldn't take it anymore. "Are you both blind? Can't you see me?" This voice was familiar, like that of a dear friend. "Dier?" said Shen Qingqiu. "Don't dier me or hua me. I'm me," the black fog snapped. "I'm the Skinner demon who once struck fear into this city." Shen Qingqiu was speechless. Was this really that insignificant monster he had killed with a slap during a beginner-level quest? So the rumored vengeful spirit had been this guy all along? The black fog made a questioning sound, then drifted closer to Shen Qingqiu. "You look a bit familiar." "Of course I look familiar. The culprit who murdered you is standing right before your eyes, and all you can do is doubtfully say, 'Ah, you look a bit familiar.'" How many years had passed? It had to have been at least 10. So, under the powerful influence of easy mode, Dier's IQ hadn't increased in the slightest. Shen Qingqiu coughed once and reminded them, "This Shen is the Qingjing Peak Lord." A silence, and then the black fog exploded. "Shen Qingqiu, so it was you. Then who is he?" "You know him too," Shen Qingqiu said reluctantly. He was also at the scene at that time. After the black fog thought for a long while, understanding suddenly dawned on them. "He's your little whelp of a disciple." Now that Dier had finally remembered, they laughed madly without pause. "Shen Qingqiu, good and evil both receive their due. Heaven forces karma for all. To think you actually got by your own disciple. What an utter degenerate." As the black fog laughed and laughed, something strange happened. It was as if a great wind blew by, scattering a mass of smoke, and the black fog gradually dissipated. Only a final black wisp remained, and it was still sighing in satisfaction. "Retribution, retribution. Shen Qingqiu, you finally met retribution. Serves you right. Now I can die without regrets." So, the Skinner demon ascends to heaven, I guess, and Shen Qingqiu is left alone with Luo Binghe and a coil of immortal binding cables. Maybe don't put Zhuya away quite yet. Okay, we're at the last extra chapter. In my opinion, the most important extra chapter. If you don't want to read any of the extras, at least read this one. Let's continue before the Mojang stands start lightly beating me 3 times a day. So, some time has passed again. Bing Chou fall into a routine, splitting most of their time between traveling around and handling things in the demon realm. And they make sure to visit Qingjing Peak every 2 months so that their presence is no longer a big deal. One day, they're out and see a wedding procession. Binghe was entranced. He had never once considered what it would be like to marry. He never thought he'd have anyone to marry. And just Shizun... Shen Qingqiu seems a little cynical while watching the wedding procession. I mean, his first thought when Binghe stopped to watch was that there must be some ghostly qi or something. Luo Binghe acquires 2 sets of bridegroom robes anyway. He wants to ask, but doesn't know how receptive Shen Qingqiu will be to the idea. Shen Qingqiu, on the other hand, is starting to get concerned. Binghe has been acting weird. He's not as sticky sometimes, and he keeps zoning out. He brings it up to Liu Qingge, who is no help at all. Side note, I love this interaction with Liu Qingge. It's literally like 1 paragraph, but still. Liu Qingge is just there to drop another short-haired monster off on Shen Qingqiu's lap. He's like, "It's edible," and then turns to leave, but Shen Qingqiu's like, no, wait, take it back. He still has the first one he gave him, and it's been growing fat, chopping on all the bamboo surrounding Qingjing Peak. I guess I just love that because it means since Binghe's disciple days, that little guy has just been running around like a little peak pet. Anyway, continuing. Then, one day, at the bamboo house, Binghe trips coming in, like full on, face on the ground, ate shit walking into the bamboo house. And Shen Qingqiu is like, "Enough. What is going on?" And all of it comes out. Binghe talks about seeing that wedding and how he had no idea just how much he wanted to get married, how he wants to marry Shen Qingqiu. And Shen Qingqiu is in shock. Of course he is. Binghe just proposed. He can't find the words to respond, and Binghe starts to panic too. He starts backtracking. Of course, it's okay. Shizun doesn't have to say anything. He tries to run away. And this is where Shen Qingqiu starts getting a little mad. He's like, "Oh, you're running away? I'd bet you'd been acting this weird because you were so sure that I'd reject you, right? Oh, what am I saying? You said it straight up that you didn't think I'd accept." He's yelling all of this, all the while preparing 2 cups of wine, handing one of them to Binghe and threading their arms together. How about that, motherfucker? Shen Qingqiu's ready to marry you right here, right now. Ball's in your court, asshole. Binghe lights up at all of this. Of course, he reveals the bridegroom robes he's been hiding, and with tears in his eyes, convinces Shen Qingqiu to go through the full thing with him. The robes, 3 vows, the nuptial wine, and lastly, consummation. So, 4 hours later, Shen Qingqiu has dressed fancy, gone through all the motions, and Binghe is undressing him once again. And then there's 8 pages of smut. I won't detail that part, but MXTX does mention that Shen Qingqiu's socks stay on. Twice. The next morning, they sleep in. Binghe is scuttling about, doing chores or whatever else he likes, and a soft husband slips from Shen Qingqiu. It's one thing to use the term in the throes of passion when the husband in question is crying and begging you to, but on a quiet morning like this, well, maybe being a little late to breakfast every once in a while is no big deal. And there you have it. All the extra chapters in Volume 4. That was the full experience of the Scum Villain self-saving system by MXTX. I still super recommend picking up your own copies of the book. The illustrations are so good. The Volume 4 inside cover shows Bingqiu in their wedding robes, and Shen Qingqiu has painted Luo Binghe's demon mark on his own forehead. It's so cute. I definitely headcanon that the Peak Lords threw a fit when they found out Qingqiu got married without them. Qiga especially would want a giant celebration. I can picture Qi Qingqi bullying Shang Qinghua with every detail that she wants to be perfect. Liu Qingge would totally volunteer to stand as an obstacle to Luo Binghe, and Mu Qingfang would be like, "Bitch, not on my watch. I'll sedate you. Do not test me." And Shen Qingqiu would complain about all the fuss, but he'd be flattered, and Binghe is happy to marry Shizlin every day if he could. And then they all lived happily ever after. The end. I love this book. Shocker, I know. Bingqiu is by no means the perfect couple, or the most healthy couple, but they're perfect for each other. Like, I'm aware that Binghe's tears are mostly an act, blatant manipulation that Shang Qinghua gave him the idea to use. I'm aware, you're aware, even Shen Qingqiu is aware, but it's just that it works for Shen Qingqiu too. He's often too thin-faced to ask for attention, but all the time he talks about how endearing it is to see Binghe so sticky. He likes it, and if it's just indulging Binghe, then what's the harm? And he can tell the difference between Binghe being fussy about him not eating 3 bowls of his cooking, and Binghe actually being insecure about being rejected. His "then marry me right now, coward" reaction was actually so perfect. They're both a little stupid, but I love that about them. Maybe I should reread Scum Villain. And no one can stop me. Anyways, I want to talk about the future. Scum Villain ran out of volumes, but I want to keep my little book club. Sure, it's a little cringy, but that's life, you know? Plus, I get to reread my favorite books and use my degree at the same time. It's fun. I think next I'll do MDZS. It's been a hot minute since I read Modao. Plus, that one was my first. So look out for that. Although, for my next episode, I'm gonna do a little special. There's one more Scum Villain episode dropping for now. I hope you're ready for it. That'll be all. See you next time. Bye-bye.